There are a handful of things that will make math difficult to learn. If you've tried to get back into learning math, you've definitely run into some of these obstacles. So before we start exploring topics and handling equations, I want to help you understand a few ways you can avoid these difficulties. That'll make learning math much quicker. The difficulties that I know from personal experience are writing too small, skipping steps, cramming, overstretching, and not having visuals. Each of these have a particular reason why they mess you up, where they come from, and how to solve it. But once you understand what you're up against and how to fix them, your learning will be quicker because your efforts won't be wasted. My first problem that I ever encountered was when I started writing smaller and smaller. It's absolutely silly how many problems I got wrong because I mixed up what was a negative number, because it was just too small, I didn't see the minus sign, or what number was an exponent. I just couldn't see what I was writing. This really came about because I wanted to do a problem as fast as possible, with the least amount of scratch paper. What a complete waste of effort. Now, this is easy to solve. Just write big, make things obvious. All else being equal, which of these two would you want to try to solve? Now I hardly make mistakes because I mixed up a 7 and a 1. When you absolutely know a problem and can calculate it in your head before your pen even touches the paper, you might be skipping steps. Sure, it can be fine to omit these during the most obvious times, or combine a couple operations into one. If you are getting things wrong though, then when you write it out, you'll be able to see where you made a mistake and correct it. This is especially important when you're learning a new topic. I remember when I was in school, I had a problem that looked something like this. I knew I needed to get the r positive on one side, and I knew I needed to get the denominators to be like. But because I was combining multiple steps into one and I wasn't keeping track of things, I missed that there was a minus sign. And that's also because I was writing too small, and a minus sign is easy to mix up with the fraction. This looked good to me, so I solved it, r equals 1/10, and I got the problem wrong, even though it looks like I got the problem right. I'm all for cutting corners. After all, I think that being quick is efficient. At least I'd like to think so. It reminds me of when you're cutting wood. It's better to take the time to measure twice and cut once. Likewise, save yourself the worry and just write out the steps you're taking. Bonus points if you list the rule that you're using each time. Now, if you aren't stopping yourself from making the mistake in the first place, then you'll at least be able to see where you made it. Now, onto the memory side of learning math. Cramming is hardly equal to learning. This is the worst case scenario, because what we want to do is we want to retain and we want to remember the concepts we learned in math. When you have a deadline, whether that be a test or some problem you're trying to solve, and you cram all at the last moment, you might just barely manage. But utilizing math to its full potential means developing problem-solving skills for years to come. To stop cramming, you have to slow down and give the material time. Learn over multiple days. That'll let you come back to problems to review. This is a lot of space and allows for breaks before deadlines. This is a study habit that you can cultivate. Use the Pomodoro technique. Give yourself breaks. Calendar out days, at least a week before a big test, to make sure you're getting the time. I know that one of the reasons I'm still learning the basics is because I crammed too often. It can be avoided though. Learn it well, or learn it again. Cramming actually leads to the next issue, overextending your capabilities and your knowledge. When you don't cram and you learn well, you build up a foundation that the rest of math can stand on, and it's strong. You're going to keep learning new concepts, but it's okay because you mastered the old ones. You gave yourself the time to do so. When your foundation is weak and crumbling and missing pieces, but you're still trying to continue and learn advanced topics, it's not going to stand on itself. You might be able to understand the concepts for a moment, but you'll be very frustrated and disheartened. Math makes sense when you can see how it can build upon itself. When you're trying to learn trig, but you have a really fuzzy knowledge of what sine and cosine mean, you're not really going to be able to see how it builds on itself. Embarrassingly, I got through Calc 1 and I'm still fuzzy with these simple concepts. I know they're important. I know that cosine and sine are used to simulate continuous smooth movement in game development, but I definitely overextended myself, and even though I got through Calc 1, I don't have these foundations solid. Whatever level of math you're at, this idea of building upon simple concepts is everywhere. So if you are struggling with a concept, it's best to look at its components. Take some time mastering those fundamentals. Renew your knowledge, fix the foundation that you're working with, and you'll eventually be able to learn what you're trying to learn to accomplish your goals. Once you're comfortable with the basics, you'll have an easier time moving forward. The last point is the reason for my teaching style. It's hard when you don't have any visuals, when all you have is numbers and words. Tactile math is all about creating visuals that you can manipulate. Like any real project you have, you're going to be manipulating and making alterations to something real. So it's best to practice that from the start. Imagine geometry if you weren't allowed to have any graphs. It would be absolutely ridiculous not to give yourself the advantage of graphs and visual aids. Tools such as blocks and sticks and anything else you can think of let you see these things in a visual way. It makes it fun. It makes it memorable. You can use your creativity and use simple objects to make it more relatable. That way you have more types of memories to pull from when you're working on a real project. On your journey in math, have you encountered any of these pitfalls? What are some ways you can be creative and solve them? Once you've had the chance to learn deeply and remember vividly, you won't want to go back to these disadvantages. You're prepared to learn efficiently. Now I'd say it's time to jump in and start getting into some real work.